Hi folks, I'm Jack Kennedy and welcome to this virtual farm walk on the farm of Stephen and Hazel Wallace, farming at Seaford in County Down. We would love to be doing this farm walk in person, but given the ongoing restrictions on COVID, we are once again bringing you this farm walk virtually. You all know at this stage that the Dairylink programme is brought to you with the full backing of Lakeland Dairies, MSD Animal Health, AFBI, CAFRE, Teagasc and ourselves in the Irish Farmers Journal. You will have been following the progress of these farmers in the pages of the journal, or if you haven't, you can always look back and catch up. So to get down to business, before I introduce my guests, we are going to take a helicopter and fly down close to the Wallace farm and get a bird's eye view of the farm. Then we'll come back to studio and I'll introduce you to my guest. Let's start our virtual tour.
Stephen and Hazel Wallace run Heenandale Farms near Seaford in County Down. The farm extends to 110 hectares, which is nearly all in one block. Stephen and Hazel are milking just short of 200 high-yielding wholesome Frisian cows. The overall stocking rate is 2.4 cows per hectare. There is one full-time employee in the farm and 2 temporary staff. The herd is autumn calving, with calving commencing in early September, and all the cows are usually finished calving by early December. The farm is nearly all in grass, bar some whole crop wheat. Heenandale Farm is well served by a network of farm roadways and laneways. Cows are milked through a 14-unit double-up milking parlour and fed a TMR diet for the winter period. Overall feed levels this year will be 2.7 tonnes of meal per cow, which is higher than normal as a result of a sharp drought this summer and last summer. Indeed, drought is a bigger problem on this farm compared to other farms in the Dairylink project, as it is located in a low rainfall area and the land is generally dry and free draining. Stephen joined the second phase of Dairylink in 2019 with the objective of making the farm more environmentally, financially and socially sustainable.
Stephen Wallace, let me look at you first. That's a right good farm you have there. Do you know how lucky you are?
Yes, Jack. Do you enjoy our location? We have a very good farm unit. We have our ground all in one piece, which is very fortunate, and I do appreciate that. And we're in a beautiful area. So,
you are. I mean, it's a super part of the world. I mean, Stephen, in the main, it's a dry block of land, and I'll say like that. Like it probably drought is an issue, or has been an issue over the last couple of years, has it?
Yes, it has. It seems to be more so now than average. About 4 years ago, we had our prolonged dry spell, and back again in the year last year in 20, and this year for prolonged spells. And previously, before this, it could have been up on 20 or more years back before. So this is coming more regular. Yes.
Okay. Listen, we'll get into the detail a little bit later in the virtual tour, Stephen. Judith McCord, you're farm advisor to this farm. I mean, it's very easy to farm in this part of the world, isn't it?
Hi, Jack. Yes, well, yes and no. Stephen does a very good job actually at showing how well he does farm the land. It has its ups and its downs, as it does on every farm. So he's definitely a good taskmaster anyway for an advisor coming on farm with questions as well.
Absolutely, he is. Aidan Cushnahan, you've been working with Stephen and the other farmers in the Dairylink project for the last number of years. This must be the easiest farm to farm, is it? Stephen has no bother farming this farm.
Oh, well, yes, Jack. Hello, everybody. Yes, Stephen's farm, like every project farm, I'd have to say, poses its own challenges, and I'll probably get into that a bit later on. But I'd say that Stephen's been very receptive of what we've been trying to do with the project, and I think you'll see over the course of the next few minutes how that's borne fruit.
Correct. Aidan Brennan, you were up on the farm even last week. How would you describe the farm?
Undulating hilly, Jack, really good quality land. You know, it's really a benchmark farm for the area, you'd have to say. And you know, it's definitely one of the, as we've already alluded, one of the finest farms, I suppose, in the Dairylink project in terms of scale and quality of the land. But as you've kind of said, that, you know, burning up in summertime is probably the biggest risk for that farm, in terms of grass growth anyway.
Aidan, you walk the farm. I mean, it's perennial ryegrass in the main, some clover coming through, but perennial ryegrass right through.
Yeah, absolutely. And good quality swords of perennial ryegrass. You know, Stephen is doing a reseeding program, and yeah, I know you have to say swords are looking really well, and grass quality is good.
Okay, let's get straight into it. So, right, folks, that's a kind of an introductory piece. We're going to take now kind of a section, looking at the farm in a little bit more depth. We're going to have a few slides from Judith and Aidan in terms of some of the stats behind the farm, some of the soil fertility issues. And then we're going to move into the cows and have a look at the cows that are on the farm and how the performance is and what changes Stephen has made over the last couple of years. So to get us going on all that, we're going to again play another short little video to give you another little feel for the farm in terms of the type of undulating ground that Aidan has just talked about and those ryegrass swards. Let's have a look.
Eamondale Farm is well served by a good network of farm roadways, which are critical for the quick and easy movement of cows from field to yard for milking, and also for access to paddocks during times of the year when ground conditions are difficult, and to avoid poaching or trampling over grass. The main farm roadway in between the hedges is concreted, and it is the main thoroughfare for the northern part of the farm. This road was installed in the 1980s and has since been upgraded and extended over time. Additional roadways have been installed since Stephen joined Dairylink, and recently Stephen has begun using second-hand AstroTurf as a road surface material, as it is difficult to source the correct type of stone for the surface of cow roadways. This has improved cow flow and helped to reduce the lameness incidents.
Stephen, maybe if I look at you first in terms of this piece, I mean, again, we've got a great snapshot of the farm there. I mean, there seems to be a network of roads right through the farm.
Yes, we've a good laneways in the farm, Jack. A lot of this has been done from a long time ago there of my late father-in-law and brother-in-law, Shannon and James Heenan. Yes, and I have continued on making new laneways and improvements for access to fields, which is very helpful, more so in the late autumn. I'm finding that I'm able to access 4 fields without tramping across another field. So in the latest bit of a laneway, yes.
Yeah. And Stephen, how do you work it in the spring in terms of strip wires and working off the main network of farms or that main farm road? How do you are you going with reels and pigtails, we'll say, you know, kind of early in spring and late in autumn?
Yes, I do, Jack. With some of the laneways you'll have seen maybe on the videos off the concrete lane, I'll be able to take them part way up the field and through an access off the lane. We've put multiple gates in and fields now, and I will put the reel across there and put them in one gate and bring them out in another access, which helps.
Yeah. Judith, you're working with a lot of farms in the area. Are farms local to Stephen? Are they as keen on grazing and trying to get cows in and out as Stephen is?
Yeah, I suppose it's a new thinking on things. Guys are looking more to increasing that ability to you know, graze grass and use the less expensive feed, but it takes a lot of management, it takes a lot of dedication, and it's not something that you can kind of pick up overnight. It's a learned process.
No, you're right. I mean, Stephen, I mean, you have help, we should say at the outset, like it's not a one-man band. You have help from obviously from your family, from Hazel and your family, but also from Stephen, who's been with you on the farm, the other Stephen, we'll call him, who's been with you on the farm for a good number of years.
I have, Jack. I have a good man who's been with me for up in 20 years now, and he knows the farm as well as I do, and he's a very good stock man. So that's a good help.
And Stephen, how do you work the grazing? Are you in charge of the grazing, or is he in charge of grazing, or do you share it?
No, Jack, it'll be myself in rotation. I'll do the grass measuring, and from the figures, and Aidan helps me with the figures as well, and we'll take the grazing order in descending order and manage whatever paddocks may be to take out, or sometimes to go into silage fields and bring it into the grazing.
Yeah.
So mainly myself on the grass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aidan Cushnahan, you work with the Dairylink farmers in terms of kind of making some of these decisions, or have since until you've taken up your most recent position. Just in terms of, I suppose, how that works on the Dairylink farms, the farmers do they're all weekly measuring and managing grass.
Yes, Jack. Well, look, all these farmers prior to the project, with the exception of one, have been focusing to a certain degree on grazing. What we've done in the project is to hone their grass management skills by getting them to go out there and measure grass on a weekly basis, enter those figures in a software package, which we can then use and analyze to see how much grass they have available, how well they're using that grass, and what steps they need to take to maximize the value of that grass in front of them.
Aidan, is it fair to say that lime and getting the soil fertility right, and I know we're going to come to it a little bit later, but has that been one of the kind of key areas that the program has been focusing on?
Very much so, Jack. Look, there are a number of cornerstones that you might say we've tried to focus on to improve the economic, social and environmental sustainability of those businesses. And soil fertility and optimizing that soil fertility in each of those farms has been one of those key cornerstones. We've looked at the way we looked at it is, if we can maximize and optimize the soil fertility on those farms, we'll maximize the amount of forage being produced off those farms, either for grazing or silage production. Another thing we've been looking at as well is looking at the livestock within those farms to see how we can develop a breeding program which will enhance the sustainability of those livestock and improve the value of milk being produced as well.
Okay, Aidan Brennan, I see. Was that AstroTurf I see on one of the farm roadways?
Yeah, so Stephen has placed AstroTurf on some of the more recent roads he's put down. Now, in fairness, it's a small enough section, but Stephen can comment himself, but he was very happy with it on the day I was up there anyway.
Do you see much of it, Aidan, on other farms?
On certain farms, Jack, particularly more the northern half of the country, where the quality of the stone is not as suitable for cows to be walking on as it is maybe further south. So we've got harder stone, like, a lot of the sharp stones, such as limestone or basalt, not suitable for cow roadways because they're too sharp and they always they break up into kind of a diamond shape. So you're seeing it there are in very hilly situations whereby the roadway is on a steep slope, and it's very hard to keep stone on it. Okay. But definitely, more of it coming in. Look, it's expensive enough too. It's not for free, and you still need a good surface underneath them, so it's smooth and level. But yeah, you're seeing a lot more of it, particularly as I said, the northern half of the country.
Stephen, talk to me about the little bit you've done in AstroTurf, and is it successful, or will you do more of it?
I will do more, Jack, and yes, the cows move very freely on it, and through the gateway. I had stones in it before. The reason I'm trying this here, Jack, is because previously we put blinding on it, and there's a wee fine fleck of a sharp slate in the blinding, and the footman more and more it was coming through. You would have found that it was maybe cut up into the hoof, and maybe 3, 4, 5 months later it was causing ulcers. And he was pulling out these wee flints of just out of the blinding, like so. Okay. I find it difficult to find the right stone for the laneways, and I'm trying this here, and so far very good.
Okay, yeah. Stephen, I also see another shot of you there using a portable water truck. Do you use that in the spring or the autumn, or what's the kind of and how much of it do you use, like?
Jack, this year. I haven't got all my water drinkers enough in the farm at this time, but especially with the drought, with the dry spells I've seen last year and before, cows, when it gets really warm, they won't walk to the water. They'll just lie there. So I'm bringing the water maybe 2-3 moves across a 10-acre field out in the middle, while there's a couple of surrounding drinkers, but and bringing it into the heart, into the middle of the field.
Okay.
That clip was with a plastic drinker, and I'm doing a 300-gallon one there, a concrete, which you're able to move with pallet toes, which is better. Cows don't kick it around the same, and more area. Yeah. I'm trying this, and it's actually a little bit of work with it, but I've different stopcock points around the outside of the field. It doesn't really take too long till set it up and move it, and it's well worthwhile. So it is.
Okay. Right. Listen, let's move into the whole issue around soil fertility. And I know, Judith, you have a couple of slides that you want to show us, I suppose, showing the transition of the pH, the P and the K in terms of the farm, how it has moved in the last number of years. And obviously, this is a long time burner, you know, so we'll see some change. But can you maybe just very quickly take us through the first slide, and we'll have a chat around those couple of slides.
Okay, so fertile soils, you know, coupled with good grassland management on Stephen's farm are key. And the slide, I suppose, that we're looking here at the minute is the analysis, the soil results as they sit today. And today, you know, we're sitting at a pH there of 6.2, a P of 2+, and a K of 2+. So, you know, as we've already mentioned there, on Stephen's farm, improving the soil fertility is key priority to increasing the grass production.
Judith,
so
if I was looking at that, Judith, if I was looking at that, you kind of say, God, he's not bad in fertility. His pH isn't bad, and his P index is good, and his K index is good. But there's probably big variation through the farm, is there?
Yeah, huge variation there. Initially, you know, back whenever Stephen started the project there, the soil pH needed addressed. You know, back in 2018, 64% of the farm area was below optimum there, and it was sitting at less than 6.1 of pH. Now, you know, anything less than kind of that optimum reduces the soil's ability to release nutrients and reduces the response to the chemical and organic fertilizer there. So realistically, you know, at the beginning this of the journey that Stephen's on, because as we all know, this doesn't happen overnight.
The red colors I'm looking at there, Judith, are less than 5.8. So they're ones that in 2018 Stephen looked at them and he said, listen, we need to get something, we need to start fixing pH here. Yes,
so you can see there, you're right, Jack, on this map you can see there the red danger zone, so to speak, less than 5.8 of a pH. Yellow or amber there sitting at 5.9 to 6.1, and the green for good, green for go is sitting at the 6.2 mark. So you can see, you know, realistically there's a large variation of pH over the farm, and if we can highlight there in the middle where the farmyard is, you can kind of see that the red marks are kind of more, back in 2018 were more around the farmyard.
Yeah. So now I move it on to 2021, Judith.
Yeah, so you can see now, you know, from 2018 to 2021, Stephen has done a very good job in addressing the pH on the farm. We have, you know, a lot more of the green, the good areas there of the pH, the optimum pH of 6.2 or above, and little of the red at less than the optimum 5.8.
Right.
We can see, yeah.
Stephen, if I just ask you while we're just on pH, in terms of how you've kind of set about fixing it up, has it been over the last couple of years you've been dribbling on the lime, or what way are you working it?
Jack, I would say over this last 2 years we've done about 120 or 30 acres treating with lime, with high calcium lime actually it has been, and doing bits of reseeding as well on ground. It has to be targeted with lime, and also maybe targeting areas with the soil analysis. We've been able to see who's low in the P's and K's and addressing the proper fertilizing application to that areas as well. So as Judith says, it's ongoing. We have a lot. We intend to do a fair bit of liming, hopefully at the back end of this year as well.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And typically, what are you going out with, Stephen? Is it a kind of a 1.5 ton or 2 ton to the acre at each time, and you know, going in when the field is bare, or what way are you working it?
Jack, it has been with the high calcium lime, 1.5 tons of that does. With the ordinary lime, well, you're talking of 2 ton and 2.5. So you are, but I've nearly targeted the high calcium as well. So it's ranging from 1.5 tons to 2.5. Mainly, we're tried last springtime. We're trying to get the better, you see, better return. We're in the autumn time for the following year is maybe a better. You're getting your return a bit quicker. You know,
you're getting that response a bit quicker. Like exactly, yeah. Okay. Judith, if we maybe move on to the P, and again, you have a lovely map. Again, the color coding system here on phosphorus showing us 2018, and I suppose where phosphorus was in 2018 when we started out. Again, I'll say there's a lot of dark blue there on that map.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark blue. You can see there by the codes on the left hand side. Dark blue is 3+, and then you've got your going down the shades there, the lighter blue at 2+. Sorry, 3+ was the darker blue, 2+ was the lighter blue, and then right down to white there at the -2. So, you know, from the beginning of the project there, you know, we were kind of running with a soil analysis of 17% below for the P values, and whenever you break that down into 0 and 2-, you know, you're kind of 7% of the farm was sitting at an index of 0, and 10% was sitting at a -2. So there's a wee bit of work there in kind of bringing a few of that up, but all in all, it wasn't too bad.
And Judith, it's fair to say that most of those lighter colours, the lower P, they're away from the farmyard. The farmyard is down here, and the lighter colours are away from it. So that slurry, obviously, is it that's causing that? Or you're not causing it, but that slurry going close to the farmyard and not going out to the further away fields.
Yeah, and you know, realistically, you know, we would see that on a lot of farms. If everybody was able to put this kind of diagram of their farm and color code it like this, you would see the darker blues around the farmyard. So I'll just jump in there quickly to suppose do a wee thank you to Ms. Truesdale. Without the graphics, being able to get Stephen's PKs and limes on this, we needed Anna to do that. Thanks, Anna.
There, I moved on to the soil map for 2021 and soil P. So this is kind of the transition. So it's fair to say maybe a little bit more lighter blue coming into the picture, is there?
Yeah, I suppose more targeting of slurry spreading going on. If that's right, Stephen, kind of that will be right, you know, in terms of targeting where you're going to be putting the slurry out, and then going on with artificial on top of that if need be. Anything that is below optimum of 2-, I suppose that's whenever we would look at putting on a compound. But relatively speaking, everything is above that kind of 2+.
Stephen, have you been able to get slurry out to those faraway fields, or what way do you work it? Is it artificial phosphorus in the faraway fields?
It's a combination of both, Jack. There's some of the areas, them faraway fields there. We've good ground and dry ground, but we've some good hills as well, and that would be a reflection of some of the areas that are lighter or harder to access with the slurry. Right. But yes, with the mapping, it keeps us focused to what areas to go to.
Yeah, Jack, perhaps I could add in there as well, like, because we had the soil analysis, we were able to enter that data into a nutrient management planner program that we have, which was able to identify what each field needed in terms of N, P, and K. So as Stephen said, then we were able to target the nutrient applications accordingly.
Yeah, that formalizes it and structures it and gives a kind of a printout for it. And I call it's a tool that you as an advisor and the farmer can kind of easily access that. Yeah, I mean it's a super tool. In terms of potassium, here's 2018, Judith, in terms of what it's looking like. Again, maybe describe what we're looking at.
Yeah, so again, suppose you can see from the color coordinated on the left, the darker purple at above 3, working your way down to the more diluted purple there at -2, or 2 minus for K. So you're kind of at the beginning of 2018, it was about 15% below optimum level there on farm, for K, for potassium. So, you know, again, if you jump forward then to today, you can see a better variation of that kind of 2+, and yeah, we still have a kind of in around 3 index, but at the end of the day, you know, again, targeting slurry application and targeting fertilizer has helped this. Again, Stephen has worked tirelessly on the nutrient management plan for the farm and been able to kind of address the need for the crop need through the soil analysis.
Aidan Cushnahan, in terms of, I'll say that this farm is it typical of Northern Ireland in terms, and maybe the Dairylink farmers in terms of the P&K was good, especially around the farmyard, and I suppose they've saved money over the last number of years in terms of not putting out excess P&K, and obviously that saves the environment as well.
Yes, Jack, I think what this exercise has done is probably confirm a lot of what anecdotal evidence we had in farms previously, that we thought farmers were maybe just taking slurry to fields that were near the yard and what have you there. The fact that we went ahead and we analysed the soils and we prepared a nutrient management plan has also helped Stephen to build up levels of soil fertility right across the board without using excessive amounts of nutrients that might have had an adverse environmental impact as well.
Aidan, Brendan, you'd say looking at the maps, and again, as Judith said, I think it's a real nice visual tool to kind of show how farmers can see the different kind of variations across their farm. But you'd say looking at this farm that it's well set up, you know, with soil fertility to grow plenty of grass.
Definitely, Jack. Yeah, I mean, the key thing there is that it's probably going to grow a lot of grass with less levels of chemical nitrogen. So particularly down the south, we know there's going to be limitations, more limitations how much nitrogen we can spread. And a key thing to get your farm growing well, your soil health improving, is through having good soil fertility in terms of P's, K's, and as you say, the lime. So that gets all other nutrients working better. And you can replace a lot of chemical nitrogen with biological nitrogen if your soil fertility is good and your earthworms are working and functioning and other microbes.
Yeah, and it's fair to say clover won't grow either unless the soil fertility is right. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and clover has a higher tolerance, particularly for phosphorus and some other nutrients, than just perennial ryegrass alone. So again, it's more important. And like, you're dead right. I mean, this farm now is well set up to grow a lot of grass. With you know, if clover got established with relatively low levels of chemical nitrogen, which is good.
Stephen, in terms of clover, have you any kind of, I suppose, plans or desires to kind of get more clover into the swards, or how are you working that piece?
Yes, I have desires for it. Previously, I sowed a lot of reseeding years back with a lot of clover in it, and it became difficult to manage for the docklands. I used sprays which were supposed to be clover friendly, and I thought them to be maybe also dock friendly. I didn't get on successfully with that. Docks became very heavily populated, so I gave up on it, on the clover, trying to save clover to get rid of the docks there. I would like to, on my reseeding, perhaps to try and stitch clover in, for I would like to get clover established again and try and keep on top of the weed control.
Okay, Aidan, Brendan, or Aidan Cushnahan, it is one of the challenges with clover is weed control, and either getting it right at the start is probably the best option, is it?
Yeah, I'd say it's more of a reseeding thing, and your post-emergent spray that's clover safe after reseeding in order to retain it in the sward. But the oversowing is an option, but really, you know, it's difficult to achieve. Results are mixed. I'd say for the likes of Stephen now, a full reseed and established clover, and mind it afterwards is probably the key.
Aidan Cushnahan, do you see a pressure coming on? You know, we're in the Republic, we'll call it, there's going to be further restrictions on reducing artificial nitrogen. Is the same pressure going to come on farms in Northern Ireland?
Jack, it's fair comment that the environmental issues are very much to the fore in the industry at the minute, and certainly anything we can introduce that will help sustain those businesses and reduce the environmental pressures have to be considered. And I think just to follow on from what Aidan saying there, yes, Stephen's been looking at introducing cover to the sward. Sprays have been an issue. I suppose the way the swards are being managed as well, in terms of how they're being grazed, will help to maintain the clover content of the sward as well.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And speaking of grazing, Aidan, I mean, we're the slide we have up now is the I suppose it's the grass wedge that you use and that the farmers in Dairylink use to manage grass on a weekly basis, and Stephen uses, obviously. I mean, there's a couple of slides here. One here that I'm settling on now is, I suppose, the grass wedge for the 7th of July. Maybe just explain, I suppose, what we're looking at here, and then I'll move it into August, and you have an updated one for September.
Look, yes, Jack, what you're looking at here is a result of the exercise that Stephen does and the other Dairylink farmers do on a weekly basis. That they go out and measure the grass covers on each individual field of the farm, and they entered into that software package that I mentioned earlier on. And this is the result of that exercise. You get to see a wedge on the report sheet. To give you a bit of an explanation of what's going on here, if you're not aware of what a grass wedge is, each of the green bars that you can see on the chart there represent the grass covers recorded on an individual field of the farm, where the heaviest figures are recorded on the left-hand side and the lowest covers are recorded on the far right-hand side. The blue line that you see going diagonally across the graph represents the herd demand line for grass on a daily basis. And ideally, what we're trying to do there is get the tops of those bars to just about reach that blue line right the way through the graph.
Yeah.
Under normal conditions, that's fine. That usually works okay if things are being managed appropriately. Unfortunately, and has already been alluded to earlier on the presentation, this area that Stephen was farming in suffered quite badly from a drought back at the start of July. And as a result, grass growth started to decline quite a bit. If you look there in the top right-hand corner of that graph, you can see the daily growth was just under 30 kilograms of dry matter per hectare per day. Under normal circumstances, we'd have been expecting at least double that. What's the result of that? It basically means you get a grass shortage. And going through this exercise allowed us to identify how much of a shortage Stephen had. Looking on the basis of what this wedge is here, you can see there is a gap between the blue line and the green bars. We reckon that was creating a shortage of around 4 to 5 kilograms of dry matter per hectare per day in terms of grass intake for the cows. So we had to go about developing a plan to rectify that deficit until things started picking up a bit. What we did was, I suppose, to give a bit more detail there, was to give those cows some extra grass by bringing in grass that Stephen had set aside for an additional cut of silage. We also introduced a bit of buffer feeding in forms of silage for a couple of weeks until things started picking up again. And this is the result of those efforts. You can see this is the same wedge measured at the start of August. You can see the growth rate in the top right-hand corner there was 51 kilograms of dry matter per hectare per day. So things had started picking up a bit. It had started to rain again. And grass growth picked up. And you can see now those bars are more or less reaching where the blue line is on the graph, which is where we wanted to be in the first place.
Correct. Yeah. And then your next slide is taking us right up to September. So where we are at the moment, and we probably should say that we're measuring here in total cover. So you can see the numbers are up to 3,000. So if you're looking, if you're on the other measurement will say you take off 1,500 of these measurements, but the exact detail isn't important anyway. But it's total cover, whether you're losing, is what we're seeing here. So we're seeing here that he's back into surplus in September, Aidan.
Yes, there's a bit of a surplus building up there, Jack. Yes, you can see on the far right-hand corner side of the graph there, the bars are actually building up above the blue line, which would indicate that there will be more of a surplus. And that's, again, a reflection of what's been going on at the farm. There aren't the same number of cows being grazed at the moment. There are cows being dried off. They're being brought indoors in preparation for calving, which we'll be touching a bit on later on here. Yeah. So, but grass growth will start to decline a bit as well. So, it may not just be as much of an issue as it would have been had we been discussing this, say, perhaps in April, early May.
Yeah. Stephen, in terms of grass, we're looking at the chart here for your current grass supply. I mean, are you still a little bit behind in terms of where you need to be, kind of to allow you kind of build up a bit of grass for the autumn?
Maybe making life a wee bit, just a wee bit more complicated too, Jack. Now, as Aidan has said, there with a number of dry cows, so I'm trying to also sweep in behind with the dry cows on in-calf heifers. So the grass is tipping along fairly nicely. There's good growth at the minute, and it is going to decline now, predicted to drop to the average growth, which will slow the rotations down a bit. But my base is building, and my demand, as Aidan has said, is dropping down. We have quite a lot of cows dried off, so at the moment we're sitting fairly okay with grass cover.
Okay, Stephen, again, just a kind of a close-off comment on this section. Like, I mean, you started using the wedge and the kind of the grassland management, the weekly management. I know you were into it a little bit before you kind of joined the program. You're probably into it a bit more now, are you? And you're probably trying to use it a little bit more and kind of use the numbers that come out of it.
I am, Jack. I wouldn't not do it now. It is it's a bit of work, and there's evenings that you could do without going out and doing it, but I couldn't farm without it now. Yeah, I wouldn't farm without it. It's very important. I find the benefits of the better grass quality, and it helps come through into components, so it does, and yield. So, yeah.
I have to say, Jack, it was critical that during that July period when the grass supplies were drying up on Stephen, that it allowed him to identify how much grass he needed to actually introduce into the system. If he hadn't been recording those figures, we'd have just been guessing about how to remedy the situation, and we could have been completely off target.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to kind of, Judith, in terms of other farmers in the area and other clients of yours, will say in your catchment area, I mean, it's strong words from Stephen to say that he wouldn't farm without it, isn't it? Like,
yeah, I think that it is strong words. However, anybody who gets on to it, that is what they say. You know, once they get hooked on it and see the value of it, you know, they won't farm without it, because it's the confidence factor that they go with.
Yeah. No, excellent. Right, we've had a good snapshot of, I suppose, the soil fertility issues and how the kind of transition from the pH, P and K has moved over the last number of years. We've had a chat on the kind of grassland management and how that works on a weekly basis. We want to move on to the cows, I suppose, and that whole area around breeding, the type of cows, the performance, etc., that kind of thing. So again, let's have a short snippet of the cows on the farm to give you a feel for the type of cows that are on the farm. And we'll come back again to studio and we'll discuss some of those issues and take it from there.
Calving is just kicking off on the Wallace farm, and when the Irish Farmers Journal visited last week, Stephen had 70 cows that are close up to calving, housed in the cubicle shed, being fed a diet of low potash haylage. This has been made without any slurry or chemical fertiliser. They are also being fed 2 kg of dry cow meal with added minerals and vitamins for the dry period. These cows are all due to calve in the next 3 or 4 weeks, and body condition score is generally very good. There are other far off dry cows grazing with the in-calf heifers. As these get closer to calving, they will come into the shed. Stephen is continuing to dry off cows as they approach the dry period. This bunch of cows was dried off and sealed that day and are awaiting the arrival of the hoof trimmer. At this stage, 80% of the cows are dried off using T-sealer only, as Stephen practices selective dry cow therapy.
Stephen, looking at the footage, you have a couple of different groups. You have some cows obviously indoors, and you have some cows out, and I presume the milkers are still out. Can you maybe just explain to us the couple of groups that you have on the farm now?
Jack would have the milkers are out night and day currently, and we've just started calving there last week. I have a batch of about 70 inside at the moment, who are on silage, which has been made without the slurry, round bales. It's almost like a haylage. They're getting fed 2 kilos of dry cow meal per day with minerals in them. And then I would have another couple of groups outside the farm, just recently dried off, one's fresh dried off, and also a batch of in-calf heifers. So we have about another another couple of groups of 70 far away dry ones.
Okay.
So,
and
but
then
actually,
and what are the, you know, the second group, we call it, the ones that are far off dries? What are they on, Stephen?
grass only.
Okay.
They're just out grazing. And I have actually, yes, as I said maybe before, we've been coming in behind some of the milkers and maybe clean up the residual from milkers and cleaning out a bit of the grass then with them as well. So, but actually I've started this year something there a wee bit more efficient. It was foot trimming as I dried them off, get the foot trimmer in and maybe do batches of 25 cows or so as they've been dried off. So we'll see whether, hopefully that'll help.
Yeah, no, exactly. So you've three groups of cows, the milkers in one, they're out day and night. You have the far off dries, I call them, and they're out at grass and doing a bit of cleaning up, as you say, as well. And then you have the ladies indoors that are close up to dry and close up to calving. And you have started calving. Was that a planned start of calving, Stephen, or what happened?
Oh, well, yes, it was. They were due, the first calving was due on the 4th of September, and she actually calved on the 1st day of September. Okay. Yeah.
So as you say, that group of 70 that are indoors on the round bale silage and at the haylage type material, like we'll say, and the 2 kilos of meal, they're all going to calve in the next kind of 4 weeks, more or less.
They are. Yep.
Yeah.
It's going to be a busy month.
Busy month, exactly. Aidan Cushnan, in terms of, you know, a lot of clients in Northern Ireland, like dry cow condition, and it's important to get it right. Like, I mean, it's timely now, I suppose, that we're talking about it here on this webinar.
Yes, Jack, I think one of the reasons we wanted to highlight just as a short piece on dry cow management is because a lot of farmers in this area will be thinking about calving cows shortly. So the way in which those dry cows are managed now will have an impact on how much milk those cows produce, and indeed how quickly you can get them back into calves. So Stephen there has focused quite a bit on it recently. He's looked at the condition of the cows. It's critical we try and get these cows dried off in around condition score 2.75 to 3. And by that I mean we have a reasonable cover of flesh over the tail head there, as you can see in the photograph. Stephen's been allowing a 6 to 8 week dry period for those cows. He's already described a bit about the way in which the cows are managed in terms of the feed practice during that period, whereby cows in the close-up period are offered silage which has been made with no slurry or compound fertilizer. Reason being, what he's trying to do there is produce a forage which is low in potassium, which in turn has a low what they call dietary cation-anion balance, or DCAB value. And that cows being fed that sort of diet at that stage should in turn have a reduced risk of milk fever when they calve down.
Okay, yeah.
So
I might just ask Stephen, have you been getting much milk fever, Stephen? Has it been a problem? And is this solving it now, you that type of haylage, that type of feed to those dry cows?
Jack, I've been doing this sort of management of the silage this 2-3 years. And last year, out of all our calving, I put bottles into 2 cows who weren't actually downers. They were a wee bit, I thought, staggery. So milk fever has not been an issue, and this has really made an impact on it. Okay. So it has from where we previously were.
Yeah, I know Aidan and the rest of the team involved with the farm. You have an animal health plan, and I see. Talk to me about selective dry cow therapy. Have you many of the cows that are not getting antibiotics at this stage?
I suppose this couple of years we've started this. Last year we've done it more so this year. I've been more targeting this year. Averaging, Jack, last week, averaging drying cows off maybe in 10s and 12s here at the moment. It would be, the average will be maybe 2 cows out of the 12 who are receiving antibiotics. You know, the rest is sealer only. So there's a good percentage sealer only. You know,
maybe over 80% of your herd are being dried off and they're sealer only, no antibiotics. Yeah,
that's correct. That's correct.
And your threshold, excuse me, your threshold, Stephen, for that is the kind of cows less than 100 SCC throughout the year, or what's your threshold?
Averaging under 100. I'm told it can go higher, but I'm happy with that. I'm happy with staying at 100.
Okay.
And,
okay. Winter feeding, and just maybe we should just move on to, and again, just talk about, I suppose, what, because I mean, we're producing a lot of milk during the autumn on this farm, so quality silage is important. Stephen, you're working a kind of a 4-cut system. Just maybe kind of, when does that start and when does it finish?
this is the first year we've went on to more of the multi-cut, Jack. Previously it was 3 cuts there. It sort of leaned itself in. We got on early this year. We got out with fertilizer early. Conditions was good and growth, while it was turned cold in the spring, but grass was decided, I think it was April, the last day or so of April, we got our first cut in, and we went relatively every 4 weeks thereafter, looking for the sweet grass. It come to July, we weren't, again, the yield was very low, or fairly low, but the grass was going back into the ground, and we took it, and so now we're actually taking our 4th cut just now. Our 4th cut has been held back because we were had to put the milkers over the silage ground, so I had to re-sow again and go for stalled it a bit, but so we'll see. Okay. Next year we'll know the benefit of this winter coming, how big an impact it makes on to the cost of feeding them of meal.
Yeah, I mean, Aidan or Judith, I mean, the objective here obviously is to get the quality silage in the pit and to try and reduce, I suppose, the concentrate that's needed over that winter period.
Yeah, Jack, I suppose, look, this is just following on from a webinar we had earlier on. We're looking to get silage there with a quality, some reason at 25 to 30% dry matter intake values approaching or over 100, and ME or energy concentrations over 11.5 megajoules per kilogram of dry matter. And Stephen's been able to fairly well consistently do that throughout the project. I suppose the other thing that we're all, Stephen has been working with his local nutritionist is the formula that maximizes the contribution of first cut silage throughout the winter as long as possible. So dads in the past have been formulated using a mixture of first and later cut silages to achieve that, and we anticipate that the same plan will be put in place this winter.
Judith, is there many using the kind of the multi-cut system, as Stephen calls it, as in regular cutting, like taking relatively lower yields with and trying to go for that higher quality, or are people going for more bulk?
I suppose this has caused a bit of a concern over with guys. It's very much a mixed bag. You've got some guys who like the stability of the diet in the winter time and go for the 4 cuts to create the stable kind of uncertainty, of pits. However, there's some guys who are going for the bulk, and as Aidan said, again, kind of mixing that first cut with maybe 3rd or a bit of last year's 3rd, so realistically it also depends on the setup of the farm, as to the ability to take 4 cuts, and the suppose the area in which they can silo it.
Okay, thanks for that, Aidan Cushnan. And again, I suppose coming back to you in terms of the breeding piece, we're here talking about the cows and what they're kind of, I suppose, how they're performing, and I suppose the fertility aspects of it. We've touched off the kind of, I suppose, some of the local management, the dry cow management that's happening on Stephen's farm. We've touched off the winter feeding that's happening and how that's working, and the main diet on the winter period. Breeding is equally as important. I mean, you have a slide here showing the kind of the PLI system and some of the targets, and the EBI or the EBI system, depending on what farmer is selecting on. And I suppose just some of the focus. Just maybe take us through this slide in terms of what we're looking at.
Oh, absolutely, Jack. Look, it's maybe not something that's very much the foremost in most boys' minds at the minute in terms of sire selection, but it's certainly something that we're encouraging the Dairylink project farmers to think about at this stage. I mentioned earlier, we're trying to breed a cow that's more sustainable in the long term in terms of getting back into calf more easily and producing more milk solids. And the selection criteria that you see here have been designed to reflect that, by giving the farmers some criteria to select sires against. when they're looking through the catalogues or lists or what have you. There are two systems we've set up here, be it PLI or EBI, but both are designed with the point of view to improve milk solids or fertility. If we look at the PLI system there, we're looking to try and select sows that have a PTA or protected transmitting ability for milk greater than 100 kilos, butterfat percentage greater than or equal to plus 0.08%, and protein percentage of greater than or equal to plus 0.08%, and an improved fertility index of greater than or equal to 5 days. EBI figures might be slightly different in terms of the numbers there, but again, the principle applies just the same as what it does on the left-hand side there. We're trying to improve butterfat percentage, protein percentage, and fertility index within these herds.
No, I mean, absolutely. And as you say, it's maybe not what guys are thinking of now, but I think it's important just to kind of say it. And these are the targets, and someone looking back at this can kind of get a feel for what type of sire selection. Stephen, we're now looking at what we just talked about there a minute ago in terms of the busy September that's coming up. We're looking here at a bar chart showing the projected calvings for year herd, September, October, November, December. If you know, we can see the bars and the number of calvings in each month. But if we were to look, before we get looking at talking about this slide, if we were to go back kind of 3 years, we'd probably see cows calving in a lot of the months. Is it fair to say?
You would have seen pretty much 10 out of the months calving, and you were running around with the calving jack in one hand and an AA rod in the other hand. So you were, yeah, so this is quite a consolidation.
It hasn't been easy, I'd say, to get to this far, but I mean, talk to us about kind of the decision making around this, and kind of like you mentioned it there, the kind of, I suppose, batching it to make it management easier, and that you're kind of calving in a period and then you're AIing for a period. I mean, that's your goal, isn't it? Now you've looking at these projected calvings, like you've done very well in a relatively short space of time.
Yeah, but it come at a cost. You have to be ruthless. I actually this year just got culled everybody has a favorite cow, and this year I culled mine because of fertility, and I've had to hold back for little periods for stop breeding, which actually stretched my index a little bit, stretched it out. We've done a voluntary no breeding period. Some were carried over, and we had to just cull cows out as well. So yeah, it comes a bit of management and a bit of pain to do there, but it'll be. I'm finding the benefits starting just now, and there will be more. I'll find more benefit as we go on, and will still be easier to manage once you get them there. You will be. You're more disciplined and focused, and it'll be easier to keep it together.
Yeah, Aidan, Brendan, I mean, we all walked this farm a couple of years ago, and as you say, as Stephen says, there was cows calving 10 months of the 12 months. I mean, this batching it's a game changer for this farm, like.
Definitely, yeah. And the biggest change would be in terms of production, because you're going to get long lactations now without calving all year round, and with much less of a spread, much more use of grass during the main grazing season, because all those cows are now calved in early spring. So I think you're going to see massive benefits, not only in terms of workload, although Stephen would probably say that he's going to be busy in spring, or busy in the autumn, I should say, because he's got a lot more cows to calve, but he's making changes there as well. But definitely, I mean, this really is going to drive profit, you have to say, over the next 10 or 15 years.
Aidan Cushnahan, in terms of, I suppose, one of the take homes from this farm walk, like this virtual farm walk, like this is huge in terms of the change. I mean, if we were to look at this graph and see calvings in every month, it's a different business.
Absolutely, Jack. Look, you can't emphasize the impact that this graph has actually had on the business here, and success that Stephen's had in actually getting that calving pattern tightened up to the extent that he has. It has taken a lot of work with a number of people to get to there, but we anticipate that he will see this. He's already seeing benefits coming through, but we'll expect him to see more benefits coming through in the longer term here.
Stephen, in terms of facilities, like, I mean, you have a good milking parlour, so you're able to cope, I call it a peak in calving, or in terms of that side of things. In terms of other housing and calf sheds and that kind of thing, is that you've a plan to kind of improve it, or you're working on it at the moment?
We are working on a project at the moment for facilitating the bigger numbers of calves coming through, Jack. Yes, we have. Hopefully that'll be running and maybe be able to put calves in there in a month's time. But at the moment, I have just working on last year's housing.
Yeah.
So we are.
Yeah, and Stephen, in terms of kind of workload or labour, I mean, will you have anyone else come on during this busy period to kind of help out, or kind of will you work away yourselves through it and kind of just manage it that way?
I think, Jack, we should be able to manage. We'll play it by ear. Funny, my daughter is now coming, giving me a day and a bit in the week as well, and that's helping additional to what we have. So yeah, we'll play it by ear. I think we'll be okay.
Stephen, in terms of kind of how you got this far, in terms of kind of between breeding the heifers or not breeding the heifers and breeding the start of breeding for the cows, etc., and that kind of thing. I mean, like this time, like I call it, it's probably the 1st of December when you start breeding this time last year. Like, I mean, did you have to kind of, what did you have to kind of do to kind of, to get as many cows and heifers as you could available for submission in December to make this big change so that you'd have this block calving in September, October, November?
And Jack, I probably should add too that we've sort of put the breeding over to RMS as well, as in the manual technician coming in to do it, which has been a huge benefit to take the workload off myself. And what we've done previously, last year we brought our heifers in a month before breeding would start, got them stabilized onto their silage and got them saddled. So we started breeding. Everything was natural breeding, and later on we started to induce cows and heifers to tighten them in as well, to bring them into the window of the breeding frame. And so it was a sort of a team effort as well of managing them.
And Stephen, did you use any drugs, or did you go to any routine to kind of to make that happen, or was it just all natural, kind of as standing heat, like? Yeah.
No, it wasn't all natural. We did, and I omitted to say there, we bring the vet. The vet would come in every 2 to 3 weeks, and would have been scanning, and then we would have been inducing them with Estromate, and later any girls who perhaps had any problems, we would have put cedars in them as well and put them on a breeding program.
Okay. Aidan Cushnan, and if I look back to you again, just in terms of, I suppose, the performance, I mean, we're talking a lot around these cows, but I mean, I suppose how the herd are producing, and I suppose where that is relative to target. I mean, they're a high performing herd, it's fair to say. It's a high input, high output system, and using as much grass as possible. Is that how you describe it?
Yes, we are operating a system where we rely highly on forage, but we're trying to maximize the output from that forage, Jack, as well. I suppose what you're looking at here are a set of targets that Steve and I derived for the business over a number of years, to give us something to see where we were and something to focus on over the duration of the project. And you can see in the bottom half of the slide there how the herd has performed against those targets. I suppose if we focus on the targets, first of all, you can see there we set out targets there for cow numbers, annual milk yield, solids production, and the amount of concentrate required to achieve those. Back in 2019, we were looking at focusing on around an average milk yield of around 7,800 litres per cow per year, with corresponding solids output of 575 kilos from a little under 2.5 tonnes of concentrate. Moving on to the end of 2021, you can see that's increased a bit, whereby we're looking at a small increase in milk yield, but we wanted to increase the amount of milk solids being produced substantially from where he was initially, while maintaining a high degree of forage utilisation. You're looking at a feed rate there, somewhere in the region of a target in the range of about 0.3 kilos per litre. How did we do in comparison to that? Well, you can see from 2019 through to the most up-to-date figures we have, the rolling average figures for the end of July of 2021 this year. There is an increase in milk yield there. We're currently in around 8,100 litres per cow per year, and there has been a significant increase in milk solids production up to the end of July this year. Now, some might argue that's partly down to the amount of milk being produced. So it just worked out there. There was quite a bit of milk fat and milk protein increase in the herd. If we'd maintained the fat and protein at the same level as what we had back into the end of 2020, the milk solids production would have been about 13 kilos a cow less than where we are currently. Concentrate inputs are a bit higher than what we wanted for this time of year. We're working on a feed rate of about 0.33 kilos per litre, but what you've got to bear in mind is that's a rolling average figure from the end of July last year to July this year, and that encompassed 2 drought periods that we weren't expecting on the farm, whereby we weren't able to utilise the grass to the degree that we wanted to, and we had to bring in additional feed. So that's had a certain impact on the feed rate. But overall, performance has improved, solids production's improved, and you can see the overall margin over concentrate figure has also improved, going from 1,446 pounds per cow at the end of 2019 to a little over 1,700 pounds per cow currently.
Stephen, are you happy in terms of that level of production? Like, I mean, you're getting to kind of an 8,000 litre cow average now, and 620 kilos of milk solids, feeding 2.5 tons of concentrate. Is that where you kind of want the farm to be set up at?
We're getting there, Jack. I would want maybe, I don't want to go to 9, perhaps 8, 8.5. I want my solids up. We're with our breeding, we are improving, focusing on solids and fertility. Don't need, I want a cow that's functional, that will eat grass. So I don't for the system, I don't want to be going up to a high litre cow to get, I don't want fertility to suffer. So number wise, we did lose cows. We're a little below target there. We've lost cows with TB out of the herd. So it's on again, we've been taking cows, we've been a bit ruthless taking stragglers out, but I want my numbers will come up somewhat. They will come up this winter, 210, 220, and I wouldn't be far away at 83 or so thousand litres, and keep building the components.
I mean, Aidan Brennan, you mentioned it there when we were looking at the calving pattern. Like, I mean, you know, the batching and getting better calving pattern will kind of automatically bring more milk. You know, he doesn't have to breed that. There's probably plenty of milk in the cows.
Yeah, like that's one thing we see here the whole time, that high fertility herds with good fertility tend to produce more milk solids, and it's driven by the fertility as opposed to the focusing on the kilos of milk. Because the fertility itself, you're having a big bunch of cows at the one time, they're all going to get long lactations, and it's lactation days is what's really driving milk yield and these fertile herds. And it's a much cheaper way of achieving that volume of milk than we say breeding and having to put in an awful lot more concentrate in order to get the volume out of it. If you're breeding for high PTA for volume, as Aidan mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Jude, that kind of relative to other farmers in the area, are most of them, like, how would you describe them? Are most of them kind of flat profiled, or are they kind of batching, like, I suppose similar to kind of what Stephen is aiming for and what he's actually doing, as we can see in terms of his calving pattern?
I think that now going forward with information, I suppose, like the Dairylink project, that boys can see the benefit of batching. So, you know, more and more I'm seeing guys having the kind of the batching system. And also, you know, hats off to Stephen through this project, because, you know, as you kind of have seen, improving that grass utilisation and grass quality, you know, has increased the dry matter tonnage per hectare and the profitability, as you can see here on farm. So yeah, there's been a lot of areas there that guys are now taking forward.
Yeah. Stephen, if we look back over the last number of years in terms of, I suppose, how the farm has performed, and I suppose what you really wanted to change, like, I mean, you started off working with Conal Keown and then Aidan Cushnahan, and obviously working with Judith closely on the farm. I mean, when was the light switch turned on in terms of trying to get more from the farm and trying to get more from the soil fertility and the herd?
Yeah, for me, it was a visit to your phase 1 Dairylink project, out to a farm up at actually Nigel Corbett's up in Fedney. And previously I was thinking, yes, you need good grass, you need reseeding. But it was that day up at Nigel's that you were talking about the soil structure and the quality of the soil and the structure and pH and the P's and K's. And you can't grow good grass without your soil being right. Everything starts in the soil, and that for me was the switch coming on. Well, that's yes. So you want good cows. You need good cows. You need good components.
Yeah.
But if you have good cows and you haven't got good stuff to feed them, you're going to buy it from the miller, which isn't profitable. So it's a combination. But for me, that was a visit to the first phase 1 Dairylink project.
Yeah. So you went to that farm walk and you saw that discussion on soil pH, P and K, and trying to make and then you looked at your own setup and you said, I have a huge asset here at home and I need to get it firing. I need to get it firing better. I need to get the pH right. I need to get the P and K right. I need to kind of and manage the nutrients better. It
was, Jack, and I'm very thankful. I was fortunate enough to get into phase 2 of Dairylink. So with having the backup and the support from yourselves and advice, it has been very beneficial to me. To our farm.
No, thanks, Stephen. Aidan Cushnahan, in terms of looking back over the last couple of years, what for you kind of stands out, I suppose, as kind of a highlight in terms of what Stephen and Hazel and the family have performed so far?
Yes, Jack, look, Stephen, Hazel and the whole farm have been on a journey that I don't think they've completed yet by any means, but they're certainly making progress. The fact that you can see what's happened on the farm, you can see the improvements in soil fertility that have been achieved by Stephen's efforts. You can see the improvements in grass production utilization that they've achieved, and you can also see in the bottom line there in terms of silage production what's going on there too. And those are changes that we expect to continue on, because Stephen has been very receptive to anything we've proposed and discussions with him, and he's taken those proposals on board and acted upon them. And we can see the fruits of that now.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely dead right. Yeah, I mean, Aidan Brennan, again, looking in from the outside, looking at what the farm has performed and what you have seen to date when you're up there. I mean, it's a picture perfect farm when you kind of walk onto it. But when you dig deep and work at it, like Stephen and Hazel have, they're getting a lot more from it, even though on the outside not a whole lot has changed.
Yeah, definitely, Jack. And it's something we see the whole time, though. I know we mentioned roadways earlier on, but in many cases, maybe 40, 50, or maybe at most 60% of the farm might be able to be accessed by a roadway. And already the farm then, in that case, they're hamstrung themselves in terms of how their ability to get grass into cows at the shoulders of the ear. So small investments in terms of improving roadways and grazing facilities will allow like Stephen to have extended grazing, reduce the feed costs and increase the components, because you have high quality grass going into cows, particularly in the early spring, where there's a lot of benefit, and there's a lot to be gained from that farm in early spring. All the cows are calved, and it's a relatively dry farm, so they can get cows out the grass, but you need the facilities there for it, and you also need to have the grass in the farm, because I think historically Stephen would admit maybe he might have been grazing up until end of November, and maybe there wouldn't be grass available then until the first cut silage. There'd be no grazing maybe at all done on a fair share of the farm, whereas that's changed as well now, because he's got closing covers, he's managing grass and agrinet, and it's small changes but making a huge impact on the bottom line, and I'd say workload has decreased as well, and Stephen can comment on that himself.
Yeah, exactly. Judith, in terms of other farms in the area, they won't see a whole lot of difference to, in terms of how Stephen is kind of performing or how he's going about his business. But it is really making a huge difference to kind of the Stephen's business and how it performs.
Yeah, I think that the big thing is the management and the things, and being meticulous, at the beginning, having the nutrient management plan there, going by it, having your soil analysis, targeting, areas of the farm that are below optimum. That's where you start. On top of that, like as we've already mentioned, the fantastic backbone, as I would call it, to a grazing system being the laneways. Those are the key components of Stephen's farm, which along with the management, with Stephen and the team there, kind of make everything glue together.
No, I think so, and I
Those
think
are sorry, Jack, those are the kind of the aspects that guys out in the country are seeing and kind of taking forward on their own farms.
Yeah, no, I think you're dead right, Judith. I mean, it's those basic building blocks, the tools that Stephen and other farmers are using that I think is paying huge dividends, whether it's the AgriNet or whether it's the nutrient management plan or whether it's the monitoring the cost piece. Like, I mean, all those pieces like are intricate and essential to kind of getting the performance that we're talking about. Right, folks. I think,
and they're scary. Sorry.
Yeah.
And scary to boys, like fellas don't want to go on and do AgriNet because they don't maybe know how to work it. They don't know where to start. But I suppose now that I know with Stephen, he's able to tell guys what he does, and they're taking that on board and practicing it on farms and getting the benefits and seeing the benefits. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's important, Judith, to mention just what you did, because Stephen, you were an old codger. Like, I mean, it was difficult for you to take up some of these tools in terms of pasture management or whatever. But you decided that, listen, it was important and it was essential that you take them on.
I think the phrase "old dog and new tricks" comes into play here, Jack. But yeah, certainly, I wouldn't be IT savvy. And but with help with yourselves, you can get out there. And you know what? Even for men to get out, cross measure, plate measure. The plate measuring, it's you read and do what's on the tin. And even if you're only doing that, putting into a booklet and getting your fields in growth, descending growth, it's even that. But to go on to the AgriNet, that's enough there with keeping it in a wee notebook. But to go on to AgriNet, you've got a growth record of average weekly growths. It is very, very beneficial now. So it is. There's a pile of information in the AgriNet.
Yeah. No, listen, Stephen, thanks very much for hosting us today. It's not ideal. We'd love to be there in person, as I'm sure a lot of the farmers that are watching this would like to be and listening into it. So thank you very much for hosting us and giving us a feel for your farm and working obviously with Judith, Aidan, and Conal right through the kind of program in terms of Dairylink and what has happened. And obviously all of us here in the Farmers Journal are very thankful for you for putting yourself up as an ambassador to, I suppose, to other farmers in the area, as Judith has mentioned. So that they can kind of learn from you, and fair play for doing that. Thanks for today for, I suppose, our supporters as well that make this program happen and make the whole project, Dairylink project, work. And that's Lakeland Dairies, MSD Animal Health, AFBI, CAFRE, and Teagasc indeed for helping us make the program happen. So folks, that's it for this virtual farm walk on the farm of Stephen and Hazel Wallace. We'll be back again shortly with other farm walks as we go through the autumn. Talk to you then.
Take care.